Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host, coming to you from Grand Junction, Colorado. I actually left another grand place this morning, Grand Island, Nebraska. Drove over here to Grand Junction. Drove 652 miles today, and I had 3 minutes left on my drive clock when I got here, so it's all about timing. So let's talk about Grand Junction for a minute. It's over here on the western side of Colorado. It's actually only the 17th largest city in Colorado, but it's the largest city that's not located adjacent to the Front Range. And if you don't know what the Front Range is, when you come from the east, you come west and you come into Denver or Colorado Springs or Fort Collins, any of those places, the mountains behind those cities, to the west of those cities, that's the Front Range, because it's like the front of the mountains when you get out here. But so it's not, in terms of statewide big cities, it's not super high on the list, but once you get over that Front Range, it is the biggest city until you go a long ways. Because if you wanted to go to Vegas from here or Salt Lake City, you're gonna have to make a turn one way or the other. But anyway, I'm here in Grand Junction, so I didn't know. I wanted to check. I figured I knew why Grand Junction was called Grand Junction, but I was sort of right, but I'm also wrong, partially wrong. So it turns out that Grand Junction is actually named for two different things. First was the Grand River. Now the Grand River no longer exists. About 101 years ago, 1921, they changed the name of the Grand River to the Upper Colorado River. And then the junction part came from the junction of the Gunnison River and the Colorado River. So basically, I figured it was because of the rivers, why it was called Grand Junction, but I didn't know that the grand part actually came from a river that had its name changed. And by the way, this is still called the Grand Valley, but there is no Grand River anymore technically. So go figure. But I guess by the time in 1921 they changed the name, people had been out here for Western Europeans had been in this area for 30 years and they had already named the city. So they weren't gonna, I guess it was easier to change the name of the river than the city. So anyway, that's Grand Junction. That's why it's called what it is. And it's also like the kind of the center of Colorado wine country. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, Colorado wine country. Yeah, I can see some vineyards from I-70. But it turns out that where you see a lot of the vineyards, Palisade, that's had vineyards since 1882. So, that's grown as wineries have kind of grown over the past, say 20 years. There's more and more of them popped up, but they've been growing grapes out here for a long time. And if you think about it, the climate's pretty warm, cold in the winter time, and pretty dry. And grapes actually like that. The drier it is, the better it is for sweetness of grapes. So the more rain you have, the less sweet the grapes will be. So I guess that's a good thing. And apparently it's been working for a while. There's also other fruit production out here because there's even a town down the road named Fruta. So anyway, that's a little bit about Grand Junction. I got one little bone to pick. So there's directly across from me, there's construction and there's a fence, there's a lay down area. They're building an addition onto the shop here at this Love's that I'm at. So when I was backing in, there was some crap in the way, including a fence and a pickup truck. So I candidly, I probably I probably cranked it around a little too much, and I got really close to the truck next to me. So, you know, I didn't hit him. I managed to get it in here, straighten it up, and, you know, create a gap. And I'll just show you this, like, this truck's right here. But what annoyed me was when I backed in, I looked over, and the driver of this truck is sitting in his truck. And I'm like, okay, that's whatever. You know, you could sit in your truck. But what he did was he then did this, like I was really close to his truck. Now my first thought is, well, yeah, no shit, I was really close to your truck, right? Like that's how truck stops are in the afternoon. But the other thing that irked me was that he wanted to point out to me how close I was to his truck, and I was very close. But the dude didn't move one frickin' muscle to get out and help me. And, you know, ultimately I didn't need help. But if you're like, oh, this guy's really close to my truck, get off your ass and get outside and help the guy, right? Or gal. But don't be that guy that just sits there and waits for some person to back into you or sideswipe your mirror. Don't be a jerk. So anyway, that's that. So couple of news items, or one big news item. So Heartland Express is back in the acquisition column. You remember in 2019 they bought out Millis Transfer. I think it's Transfer. It's hard to keep all this straight sometimes. So they just announced a deal to buy out Smith Transport out of Roaring Spring, Pennsylvania. And Smith is the company, you probably, if you don't know, they're actually pretty big. I was surprised how many tractors they have. They have 850 tractors, 2,000 trailers. They're the company that has black tractors and black trailers. And they have kind of like a little logo with an eagle, which doesn't narrow it down because like 8,000 trucking companies have that. But they're out of, like I said, they're out of Roaring Spring, Pennsylvania, which is right, it's just down the road from Altoona. They, if you've ever been to that Walmart distribution center in Bedford, PA, they have the contract there. So they haul, you know, they're the ones that haul to the stores out of that Bedford. I mean, obviously Walmart drivers do too, but you know how a lot of Walmart DCs, they have contracts with different companies. So anyway, 850 tractors. My experience with them is they also have a kind of a logistics company or cross-docking company. And I actually went, when I was at GP Transco, I went to Smith's, one of their warehouses at their headquarters to pick up a load when I was in PA one time. So they do a couple of things, and the deal was valued at $170 million, and the enterprise value was estimated. Well, their revenue last year for Smith was $200 million. So I guess it was 155 in cash, and then there was some other stuff that went on too. But basically, Heartland Express bought everything. So, you know, I guess the drivers at Smith will have to check with the drivers at Millis to see how that went. If I worked in-house at Smith, I might be brushing my resume up because, you know, there's always some bloodletting when your company gets bought out. And, you know, one of the nice things about Prime is that even though Prime is privately held, which Smith was, which Millis was, and a lot of these privately held companies do get bought out. Some of them get bought out by ESOPs, but others, they just take the cash and, you know, they're done being a family company, right? But one of the things I like about Prime is that even though Prime is privately held, Prime is so big that there are probably only, in North America, not just the United States, but in all of North America, there are probably only maybe like 2 companies that could digest Prime. And the reason I say that is this. Think about it from this perspective. You got Heartland Express, which is a publicly held company, and they bought another company, 3 years ago, Millis. They bought a company that had $200 million in revenue last year, and they bought it for about $170 million, $155 in cash. Prime's reefer division had about 9 times that revenue, over 9 times that revenue last year, or the last year I saw. Prime's reefer division revenue was $1.9 billion. So that gives you an idea of how big an offer would have to be for all of Prime. Now, could Prime sell part of its operation? Yeah, it could, because some companies have done that. Like Maverick had a refrigerated division, and they sold that to KLLM, and they just kept their flatbed division, which was kind of always their core competency anyway. So could Prime say, let's get rid of the tanker, let's get rid of the reefer, or excuse me, I just don't think reefer is probably not the answer, but let's get rid of something, right? It's possible, but given what's gone on at Prime for such a long time, I just don't see that happening. I mean, Prime is just like all the divisions and all the property and everything, way too big for almost anybody to digest, especially if it was a cash deal. That's a huge amount of money. I think you're probably talking, you could sell your property for whatever you want, right? But I feel like that would be just like it'd have to be at least a $2 billion deal. And I just can't imagine that happening. If you say, I think Prime is about 10 times the size of Smith, or in just tractors. We're over 8,000 tractors, so I like Prime size for that reason too, is I don't have to worry about. Now, I will say this. I think Mr. Lowe has done a fantastic job, and he's been visionary in a way. I do have some concerns about what will happen to Prime when Mr. Lowe, steps down or is just not around anymore. I don't know what the succession plan is. So that'll be a really interesting and maybe a little bit, of a nervous time. And who knows? He seems to be going strong, so I might already be retired when that happens. But because I feel like I'm going to stay another 9 years. That's my goal. Stay at Prime another 9 years. So anyway, that's that. I'm going to go down and pick up my trainee in Vegas tomorrow, and we're going to get back on the road, and I'm just going to run all through June, all through July, maybe into August a little bit before I go home again, because I'm trying to get 2 TNT trainees done. That may change, but that's the plan right now. And so the other thing I was going to talk about, or wanted to talk about, was diesel fuel prices, right? They're not really abating that much. There's been some spot shortages or worries about shortages on the East Coast. And, I've seen all these articles about, we're out here dying. And I've talked about this before, but, one of the things I haven't talked about, well, I have a little bit, but I haven't talked about it directly, and it's this. When I drive 60 miles an hour and some guy goes past me and he's going 75, 80, I clocked a guy the other day in a semi 87 miles an hour. I am doing my part, my patriotic duty, to help lower diesel fuel prices. Why? Because I go farther on less fuel. That means I am lessening demand for diesel. If you lower demand, right, it lowers the price, right? Economics is a study of scarcity in the market, okay? If collectively truck drivers, people that use diesel fuel, use less, it lessens the scarcity, meaning it reduces the price. High scarcity equals high prices. Lower the scarcity, lower the prices. So not only am I doing my part to lower his fuel cost, but he, by driving like a freaking maniac, because let's be honest, we all know that guy's gonna get someplace and sit for like 13, he's gonna do a 13-hour break, right? I had people just today pass me over and over again, right? I'm just chugging along, they're passing me over and over again, all the way from Nebraska out here to Western Colorado. Same people, okay? So not only am I helping him by driving slower and trying to be coast and be more fuel efficient, I'm helping myself. Don't get me wrong. I'm helping myself. I'm not super altruistic in that regard, but I am helping him, okay? But what he's doing in return is he's actually hurting me and himself. So I'm helping him and me, he's hurting him and me. But if he would slow down even 5 miles an hour, and so instead of driving 78, right, in a 70, if he slowed down to 73, he would help me. And so my question is, why, you know, all these super truckers that want to badmouth how fast Prime goes, you know, they're whining about fuel prices. Why are they hurting me? Why are they trying to hurt me? Okay, what did I ever do to them except maybe make them hit the brakes once in a while because they weren't slick enough to get over in the left lane in time? I don't know, but I don't know why they're trying to hurt me, because I'm just doing everything I can to help them. So the next time you come up behind a truck, especially a Prime truck that's moving appreciably slower than you, make sure when you go by, instead of looking derisively at the driver in that Prime truck, just give him a little salute and say, thank you, sir or ma'am. Thank you for doing your patriotic duty and helping me, Mr. freaking Hammerlane, helping me save a couple of pennies. Now, if he eventually goes out of business because diesel fuel gets too expensive, that'll help me too. But that's different. That's kind of a different analysis. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Hope everybody's being safe. The summer seems to be here. I don't know why, but I was like, my leg was burning up earlier. I was like, and finally I was like, oh, maybe I should just put some sunscreen on. So I did. Anyway, we'll talk to you soon. Be safe, and thanks for tuning in to Tim Travels. Bye.